If your parents ever told you you don't deserve anything, this is the story they need to hear. I'm Samantha, and this is how I turned my worst birthday into my sweetest revenge moment. 3 years ago, on my 25th birthday, my parents handed my gift to my sister instead. When I asked why, they looked me straight in the eye and said those words that still echo in my mind: "You didn't deserve anything." I walked out without saying a word, but what they didn't know was that their cruelty had just planted the seed for a 3-year plan that would change everything. The morning started like any other birthday. I woke up excited, maybe even hopeful. After years of feeling invisible in my own family, I thought maybe this year would be different. Maybe this year they'd finally see me. I had been working 2 jobs to support myself through college, while my sister Jessica lived at home rent-free, getting her car payments covered, her phone bill paid, even her spring break trips funded by our parents. But I pushed those thoughts aside. It was my birthday. Surely today would be about me, just this once. When I arrived at the family dinner, there was a beautifully wrapped gift sitting on the table. My heart actually fluttered. The wrapping paper was elegant, silver with a gold bow. It looked expensive, thoughtful. For a moment, I felt that warm feeling you get when someone cares enough to make an effort. "Happy birthday, sweetie," Mom said, but something in her tone felt off. She wasn't looking at me when she said it. We sat down for dinner, my favorite meal that wasn't actually my favorite, but one that Jessica loved. I should have seen the signs then. The conversation flowed around me like I was invisible. They talked about Jessica's new internship, her boyfriend, her plans for the weekend. Every time I tried to contribute, the topic shifted. Finally, after dinner, Dad picked up the gift box. My hands were actually shaking a little as I reached for it. 25 years of birthdays where I felt like an afterthought. And maybe this was the moment everything changed. But instead of handing it to me, he turned and placed it directly in Jessica's hands. "This is for you, sweetheart," he said to her. I sat there, frozen. The words didn't compute at first. I looked around the table, waiting for someone to laugh, to say it was a joke, to explain that there was another gift for me somewhere. "I don't understand," I said quietly. That's when Mom delivered the blow that would haunt me for years. "You didn't deserve anything. Not we forgot, not yours is coming later. Not even a lie to spare my feelings. Just a cold, calculated statement that I was unworthy of basic consideration on my own birthday." Jessica opened the gift right there in front of me. It was a beautiful necklace. Not just any necklace, but one I had specifically mentioned wanting months earlier. I remembered the conversation clearly. We'd been walking past a jewelry store, and I'd pointed it out, saying how elegant it was. Apparently, they'd been listening, just not for the reason I thought. "Oh wow, this is gorgeous," Jessica gushed, immediately putting it on. "Thank you so much. This must have cost a fortune." It had. I could tell by the way Dad beamed with pride as she modeled it. This wasn't some last-minute purchase. This was planned, deliberate, thoughtful, everything a birthday gift should be. Just not for the birthday girl. I sat there watching my family celebrate giving my birthday present to someone else, and something inside me shifted. It wasn't just hurt anymore. It was clarity. Crystal clear, ice-cold clarity about exactly where I stood in this family hierarchy. The psychological patterns I should have recognized years earlier suddenly became impossible to ignore. This wasn't the first time I'd been treated as the invisible child, while Jessica played the role of the golden child. But it was the first time I truly understood that this wasn't accidental or temporary, it was systematic. I thought back to my childhood, and the memories hit me like a physical blow. When Jessica wanted piano lessons, she got them immediately. When I asked for art supplies, I was told we couldn't afford them. When Jessica crashed her first car, Dad bought her a newer, safer one. When my car broke down, I was told it would build character to take the bus. Every Christmas, Jessica's pile of presents towered over mine. Every achievement I earned was met with lukewarm congratulations, while Jessica's mediocre efforts were celebrated like Olympic victories. I had normalized this treatment for so long that I'd actually believed their gaslighting, that I was being dramatic or too sensitive when I noticed the disparity. But sitting there, watching them fawn over Jessica, wearing my birthday necklace, I finally understood that I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. I was the designated scapegoat in a family system that required someone to diminish so others could shine. The dinner continued around me like I'd ceased to exist. They discussed the necklace, how beautiful Jessica looked, how generous the parents were for buying such a meaningful gift. No one acknowledged that it was supposed to be my day. No one seemed to remember that I was even there. That's when I made the decision that would define the next 3 years of my life. I stood up quietly, grabbed my purse, and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Mom called after me, but her tone suggested she was more annoyed by the interruption than concerned about my feelings. "Home," I said simply. "But we haven't had cake yet," Jessica said, touching the necklace like she was afraid I might try to take it. I turned back to look at them one final time. They were all sitting there, comfortable in their cruelty, expecting me to just accept this humiliation and stay for dessert like a good little scapegoat. "Enjoy the cake," I said. And then I walked out of that house with a promise to myself that I would never again let them make me feel like I deserved nothing. What they didn't know was that their betrayal had just awakened something in me that had been dormant for 25 years. 3 years of strategic silence was about to begin, and when I emerged from it, I would be someone they no longer recognized, someone they could no longer control or diminish. But the pattern I should have seen went even deeper than birthday presents and Christmas gifts. As I drove home that night, the memories kept flooding back, each one more painful than the last, because now I could see them clearly. When I was 16 and got accepted to 3 colleges, the family dinner conversation lasted exactly 4 minutes before shifting to Jessica's upcoming prom dress shopping. When Jessica got accepted to one college 2 years later, they threw a party and invited the neighbors. When I made Dean's List every semester, I got a distracted "that's nice" over dinner. When Jessica passed her driving test on the 3rd try, they took her out for a celebration dinner at her favorite restaurant. The financial patterns were even more telling. I had been working since I was 14, babysitting, then retail, then waitressing, to pay for my own clothes, school supplies, and eventually college expenses. I told myself it was building character, making me independent and strong. Meanwhile, Jessica had never held a job in her life, yet somehow always had money for shopping trips, spa days, and social activities. Even more insidious were the emotional patterns. When I cried, I was told I was too emotional or making everything about me. When Jessica cried, The whole family rallied around her to fix whatever was wrong. When I succeeded at something, they found ways to diminish it. "Of course you did well, you're such a perfectionist." Or, "You probably just got lucky." When Jessica succeeded at anything, even small things, it was because she was naturally gifted and special. They had trained me to expect nothing, to be grateful for scraps, to believe that their indifference was normal and their cruelty was justified. They had convinced me that love was something I had to earn through perfect behavior and endless giving, while Jessica received it freely just for existing. The birthday incident wasn't an isolated event. It was the culmination of 25 years of systematic emotional manipulation. It was the moment their mask finally slipped completely, revealing what they really thought of me. And paradoxically, it was also the moment I finally started thinking clearly about what I thought of them. As I sat in my small apartment that night, still in my birthday dress, I made a decision that would change the trajectory of my entire life. I wasn't going to confront them, argue with them, or try to make them understand how much they'd hurt me. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me beg for their love and approval. Instead, I was going to disappear from their lives completely. I was going to build something so successful, so undeniably impressive, that their opinion would become irrelevant. And if they ever tried to come back into my life, I would be ready for them. 3 years of strategic silence was about to begin, and I had no idea how perfectly it would prepare me for the confrontation that was coming. The first year after that birthday was the hardest year of my life, but also the most transformative. I had to unlearn 25 years of conditioning that told me I was worthless unless I was serving others. I had to build self-esteem from scratch, without the foundation of family support that most people take for granted. I threw myself into therapy, determined to understand the psychological patterns that had kept me trapped for so long. My therapist helped me identify the classic dynamics of a dysfunctional family system: the golden child who could do no wrong, the scapegoat who carried all the family's dysfunction, and the parents who maintained control through emotional manipulation. I learned about something called trauma bonding, how children adapt to emotional neglect by becoming hypervigilant people pleasers, always scanning for approval that never comes. I learned about gaslighting, how my family had systematically convinced me that my perceptions were wrong and my feelings were invalid. But most importantly, I learned that none of it was my fault. The way they treated me wasn't a reflection of my worth. It was a reflection of their dysfunction. With this new understanding came a fierce determination to build the life I deserved. I doubled down on my career, working longer hours and taking on bigger projects. I networked strategically, building relationships with people who valued competence and integrity. I saved aggressively, living below my means so I could build real financial independence. By the end of year 2, I had been promoted twice and was earning more money than I'd ever imagined possible. I moved out of my tiny apartment and into a beautiful townhouse in a good neighborhood. I bought quality furniture, art for the walls, and for the first time in my life, I created a space that felt like home. Year 3 brought even more success. I was offered a senior position at a competing firm with a significant salary increase and equity stake. I bought my first house, not a starter home, but a real house with a mortgage I could easily afford and rooms I could decorate exactly how I wanted. More importantly, I had built a chosen family of friends and colleagues who saw my value and celebrated my successes. I was dating someone who treated me with respect and admiration. I had created a life that was full and meaningful and entirely self-determined. During those 3 years, my birth family tried to contact me occasionally. Birthday texts that I didn't respond to. Christmas cards that went straight into the trash. A few voicemails from Mom asking why I was being so dramatic. And couldn't I just get over whatever this is about? But I stayed silent, not because I was sulking or trying to punish them, but because I was busy becoming someone they couldn't hurt anymore. Someone who didn't need their approval or their love to feel worthy. Then, on a Saturday afternoon in early spring, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach drop. There they were, Mom, Dad, and Jessica, standing on my front porch like nothing had happened. Like 3 years of silence meant nothing. Like they could just show up and pick up where we'd left off. I took a deep breath, smoothed my hair, and opened the door with a smile. "Well, this is a surprise," I said calmly. "We need to talk," Dad said without preamble. His tone was the same authoritative one he'd used when I was a child and in trouble for some perceived transgression. "Of course," I said, stepping back to let them in. "Please come in." They walked into my beautiful home, the home I'd bought with money I'd earned through my own hard work. And I watched their faces as they took in the elegant furniture, the original artwork, the clear signs of success and independence. "Nice place," Mom said, but her tone suggested she found it somehow inappropriate that I should have such things. "Thank you," I replied graciously. "Can I get anyone something to drink?" We settled in my living room, and for a moment nobody spoke. They seemed unsure how to begin whatever conversation they'd come here to have. I was content to wait. After 3 years of building my emotional armor, I was genuinely curious to see what they thought gave them the right to reappear in my life. Finally, Dad cleared his throat and delivered the line that would become the final nail in the coffin of our relationship. "Your sister deserves this place more than you." I smiled, actually smiled, because in that moment I realized that 3 years of strategic silence had given me the most valuable gift possible. Complete clarity about who these people really were, and exactly how I wanted to handle them. "You know what?" I said, my smile widening. "Let's talk about who deserves what." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. "Your sister deserves this place more than you." After 3 years of silence, after building everything I had from the ground up, they had walked into my home and delivered that line with the same casual cruelty they'd always possessed. But instead of the devastation they expected, I felt something I'd never experienced before in their presence. Complete control. "You know what?" I said, my smile widening. "Let's talk about who deserves what." Jessica shifted uncomfortably on my Italian leather sofa, the one I'd saved for 6 months to buy. She was fidgeting with that same necklace, my birthday necklace, that she still wore like a trophy 3 years later. Mom and Dad sat with the rigid posture of people who expected immediate compliance with their demands. "Samantha," Mom began in that condescending tone I remembered so well. "We've been patient with your little tantrum, but enough is enough. It's time to act like family." "If family," I repeated thoughtfully, as if testing the word. "That's interesting. Tell me, what does family mean to you? Dad's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being questioned. Family means taking care of each other, supporting each other, and right now, Jessica needs support. What kind of support? I asked, genuinely curious. Jessica finally spoke up, her voice taking on that whiny quality that had always gotten her whatever she wanted. My lease is up next month, and rent in the city is just impossible. I can't afford anything decent on my salary. What's your salary? I asked. The question seemed to catch her off guard. That's not really relevant. Isn't it? If we're talking about what people deserve based on their contributions, shouldn't we establish what those contributions are? Mom jumped in quickly. Samantha, you're being deliberately difficult. The point is, you have this big house all to yourself, and Jessica needs a place to live. Family helps family. I nodded slowly. Family helps family, I see. And what help has this family provided to me over the years? The question created an uncomfortable silence. I could see them exchanging glances, trying to come up with an answer that wouldn't reveal the truth we all knew. We raised you, Dad said finally. We gave you a roof over your head, food on the table, education. Did you? I asked. Because my records show that I've been financially independent since I was 16. I paid for my own clothes, my own school supplies, my own college tuition, my own car, my own everything. So when you say you gave me those things, what exactly are you referring to? Jessica rolled her eyes. Here we go with the martyr act again. Is it a martyr act? I asked her directly. Tell me, Jessica, what did you pay for during your childhood, your teenage years, your college experience? Another uncomfortable silence. That's different, Mom said quickly. Jessica needed more support because what? I interrupted gently. Because she was incapable of supporting herself? Because she was less intelligent, less capable, less deserving of independence? The trap was closing, and I could see they were starting to realize it. Or, I continued, was it because you had already decided that I was the one who would give everything and receive nothing in return? Dad's face was getting red now. You're twisting everything around. We're here because Jessica needs help, and you're her sister. This house is too big for one person anyway. Is it? I asked. Let me ask you something, Dad. Do you know how much this house cost? He looked around with obvious discomfort. That's not the point. Humor me. I don't know, maybe $200K? I almost laughed. Try $750K. Do you know what my down payment was? More uncomfortable shifting. $150K in cash. Do you know what my monthly mortgage payment is? Samantha, these numbers don't. $4,200 a month, plus property taxes of $800 a month, plus utilities averaging $300 a month, plus homeowners insurance at $200 a month, plus maintenance and repairs that average $500 a month. Should I go on? The room was dead quiet now. So when you say Jessica deserves this place more than me, what you're really saying is that Jessica deserves the fruits of labor she never performed, sacrifices she never made, and risks she never took. Is that correct? You're being ridiculous, Jessica snapped. It's not like you need all this space. You could easily let me live in the guest room. For free? Well, yeah. I mean, you're my sister. And what would you contribute to the household expenses I just outlined? I don't make that kind of money. What kind of money do you make? Another pause, another exchange of glances. That's personal, she said finally, I pulled out my phone and opened an app. According to LinkedIn, you work as a marketing coordinator at Henderson & Associates. According to Glassdoor, that position pays between $35,000 and $45,000 annually. According to your social media posts, you spend approximately $200 a week on entertainment, dining out, and shopping, so you make enough money to support yourself. You simply choose not to. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. "How dare you investigate your own sister?" Mom said, her voice shaking with indignation. "How dare I use publicly available information to make informed decisions about my own life?" I countered. "The same way you used information about my birthday gift preferences to buy Jessica that necklace she's still wearing." Jessica's hand flew to her throat, covering the necklace instinctively. "That's right," I continued. "I remember mentioning how beautiful that piece was. I remember the conversation. I remember thinking maybe someone in my family actually listened to me for once. Turns out you were listening, just not for the reason I thought." "You're being petty," Dad said. "It was just a necklace." Was it? Or was it the final symbol of a pattern that had been going on for 25 years? A pattern where everything I wanted, everything I earned, everything I achieved, was somehow less valuable than Jessica's needs and desires? I stood up and walked to my fireplace mantel, where I kept some of my professional awards. I picked up the most recent one, Employee of the Year from my current company. "Do you know what this is?" I asked. No response. "This represents a $50,000 bonus and a promotion that doubled my salary. It came with equity shares that are already worth more than most people make in a year. I earned this through 70-hour work weeks, through taking on projects nobody else wanted, through building relationships and demonstrating value over and over again." I set it back down and turned to face them. "Now, Jessica, tell me about your achievements at work." "I'm not playing this game," she said. "It's not a game. You walked into my home and announced that you deserve it more than I do. I'm simply asking you to explain the basis for that claim." The silence stretched on until Dad finally exploded. "Damn it, Samantha. This is exactly why you've always been difficult. Everything has to be a competition with you. Everything has to be analyzed and dissected. Why can't you just help your sister without making it into some kind of business transaction?" And there it was. The mask had finally slipped completely. "Difficult," I repeated. "Yes, I suppose expecting basic respect and fair treatment does make me difficult. I suppose asking questions about equity and contribution does make me difficult. I suppose refusing to be a doormat does make me difficult." I walked back to my chair and sat down, still smiling. "But you know what's funny? You haven't answered my original question. You came here claiming Jessica deserves this house more than me, but you still haven't explained why." "Because she's family," Mom burst out. "Because families take care of each other. Because when someone needs help, you help them." "I see. And when I needed help over the years, what kind of assistance did this family provide?" Another telling silence. "When I needed help with college tuition, what did you do?" No answer. "When I needed help with my first car down payment, what did you do?" Still nothing. "When I needed help during my bout with pneumonia in college and missed 2 weeks of work, what did you do?" Jessica shifted uncomfortably. She remembered. They all remembered. When I graduated summa cum laude and needed someone to celebrate with, what did you do? We went to dinner, Mom said weakly. Did we? Or did we go to dinner for Jessica's birthday? That happened to fall on the same weekend, and my graduation was mentioned as an afterthought. The truth was settling over the room like fog. So let me get this straight, I continued. For 25 years, I was expected to be self-sufficient, independent, and undemanding. I was expected to celebrate Jessica's achievements, support Jessica's dreams, and stay silent about the disparity in treatment. But now, when Jessica needs something, suddenly family obligations are paramount. Suddenly, sharing and caring are the most important values. Is that an accurate summary? Dad's face was purple now. You're making this sound worse than it was. Am I? Let me share something with you. I walked to my desk and pulled out a folder I'd been preparing for 3 years. Inside were bank statements, receipts, photos, and documents that told the story of systematic emotional and financial abuse. This is a record of every birthday, every Christmas, every achievement, and every crisis from my childhood and young adulthood. It includes financial records showing exactly how much money was spent on Jessica versus how much was spent on me. It includes photos from family events showing the disparity in gift giving and attention. It includes documentation of achievements celebrated versus achievements ignored. I set the folder on the coffee table between us. It also includes text messages from the last 3 years, birthday wishes that went unanswered, Christmas cards that mentioned how hurt you were by my behavior, and several voicemails asking when I was going to get over being dramatic about things. Jessica leaned forward to look at the folder, but I pulled it back. Not yet. First, I want to hear more about why I should help you now. Ente. Because we're your family, Jessica said, her voice getting desperate. Because I'm your sister. Because Mom and Dad are getting older, and they won't be able to help me forever. Interesting. So your plan was to be financially dependent on our parents indefinitely, and now you want to transfer that dependence to me. It's not like that. What is it like? I just need some time to get on my feet. Just until I can save up enough for my own place. How long would that take? I don't know. Maybe a year, maybe 2. And what would you pay in rent? I was thinking maybe I could help with groceries instead? Or cleaning? I actually did laugh then. So you want to live in a $750,000 house, contribute no money toward the $5,500 monthly carrying costs, and offer to buy groceries and do cleaning in exchange? When you put it like that, it sounds exactly like what it is. You want someone else to subsidize your lifestyle while you contribute nothing of value in return. The same pattern that's been going on your entire life. Mom stood up abruptly. That's enough, Samantha. I don't know what's gotten into you, but this cruel, calculating person is not the daughter I raised. I met her eyes steadily. You're absolutely right. The daughter you raised would have said yes immediately, apologized for having nice things, and spent the next 2 years being resentful and broke, while Jessica lived rent-free and continued to receive praise for her generosity in helping with groceries. There's nothing wrong with helping family, Dad said. You're right, there isn't. So tell me about all the ways this family has helped me. The challenge hung in the air like a sword because we all knew the truth. We all knew that help had been a one-way street my entire life. We all knew that I had been trained to give everything and expect nothing. while Jessica had been trained to expect everything and give nothing. "That's what I thought," I said, when the silence stretched too long. "So let me make you an offer." They all leaned forward, hope flickering in their eyes. "I'll help Jessica with housing costs under the following conditions. First, she pays market rate rent for the guest room, which in this neighborhood is $2,200 per month. Second, she contributes equally to utilities, groceries, and household maintenance. Third, she signs a lease agreement that includes clauses about noise, guests, and shared spaces. Fourth, she provides a security deposit and first month's rent up front. And fifth, she demonstrates financial responsibility by showing me bank statements proving she can afford these obligations for at least 6 months in advance." Jessica's face went white. That's more than I pay for my current apartment." "Is it? Because you're getting access to a house worth $750,000 in a premium neighborhood, with amenities your current apartment doesn't have. Market rate for this area is actually closer to $1,800, so I'm already offering a family discount." "I can't afford that," she whispered. "Then you can't afford to live here, just like I couldn't afford the things I wanted when I was your age, so I worked harder and made sacrifices until I could afford them." "But you're my sister." "Yes, I am, and if I were truly trying to harm you, I would let you move in here rent-free, enable your financial irresponsibility, and watch you never develop the skills and confidence that come from standing on your own feet. What I'm offering you is what no one ever offered me, a chance to prove you can take care of yourself." Dad slammed his hand on the coffee table. "This is ridiculous. You can afford to let her stay here without bleeding her dry." "Can I? Let's see." I pulled out my laptop and opened a spreadsheet. My current monthly take-home income is $11,400. My housing costs are $5,500. My retirement savings are $2,000. My emergency fund contribution is $1,000. My health insurance and medical expenses average $800. My car payment and insurance are $650. My food and household expenses are $700. My entertainment and miscellaneous expenses are $750. I turned the screen toward them. That leaves me with exactly $0 in discretionary income if I maintain the lifestyle I've worked to build and the financial security I've prioritized. If Jessica moves in and pays nothing, I'm essentially giving her $200 a month, plus utilities, plus the increased costs of feeding and housing a second person. That's approximately $1,800 per month that would come directly out of my retirement savings or emergency fund. You could afford it, Mom insisted. Could I? Over the course of a year, that's $21,600. Over 2 years, it's $43,200. That's nearly an entire year's worth of retirement savings or my entire emergency fund. Are you suggesting that subsidizing Jessica's housing is more important than my financial security? Family is more important than money, Dad said. Is it? Then where was the family when I needed financial help? Where was the family when I was working 2 jobs to pay for college? Where was the family when I was eating ramen noodles for dinner so I could save money for my car insurance? The hypocrisy was so thick you could cut it with a knife. That was different, Mom said weakly. How? You were always so independent. You never asked for help. Because I learned early that asking for help meant being told no, or being made to feel guilty for needing anything. I learned that the only person I could count on was myself. And now, after years of building financial security through sacrifice and hard work, you want me to jeopardize that security for someone who has never made those same sacrifices. I closed the laptop and looked at each of them in turn. Here's what's really happening here. Jessica is 27 years old and has never been fully responsible for herself. Instead of encouraging her to develop independence and financial skills, you've enabled her dependence. And now that you can't afford to enable her anymore, you want to transfer that burden to me. It's not a burden, Jessica said, tears starting to form. I'm your sister. You are, and because you're my sister, I want what's best for you. What's best for you is learning how to take care of yourself. What's best for you is developing the confidence and skills that come from independence. What's best for you is breaking the pattern of dependence that our parents created. You've become cold, Mom said sadly. Success has made you selfish. I smiled again. Has it? Or has it made me clear about my boundaries and values? You raised me to be self-sufficient and independent. You taught me that I couldn't count on family support, that I had to make my own way in the world. Well, congratulations, your lessons worked. I am exactly what you trained me to be. We never meant, Dad started. Didn't you? Because 25 years of consistent behavior suggests otherwise. 25 years of giving Jessica everything while giving me nothing suggests that this was always the plan. I was always supposed to be the one who gives. Jessica was always supposed to be the one who receives. The only thing that's changed is that I'm no longer willing to play that role. I stood up and walked to the front door. I think this conversation has run its course. You came here with the assumption that I would simply comply with your demands, the way I always had before. But I'm not that person anymore. I'm someone who values fairness, reciprocity, and healthy boundaries. I'm someone who believes that love is demonstrated through actions, not words. And I'm someone who refuses to enable dysfunctional patterns that harm everyone involved. I opened the front door and stood beside it. Jessica, if you decide you want to take me up on my offer, market rate rent, equal contribution to expenses, lease agreement, and financial responsibility, you have my number. But if you're looking for someone to subsidize your lifestyle, while you figure out what you want to do with your life, you'll need to look elsewhere. They filed past me in stunned silence. Jessica was crying quietly. Mom looked like she'd been slapped. Dad's face was still red with indignation. Just before they reached their car, Dad turned around. You'll regret this, Samantha. Family is all you really have in this world. When your fancy job disappears and your fair-weather friends abandon you, family is what's left. You'll regret burning these bridges. I smiled one more time. You know what I regret? I regret waiting 25 years to have this conversation. I regret all the birthdays I spent hoping you'd remember I existed. I regret all the achievements I accomplished hoping you'd be proud. I regret all the times I chose your approval over my own self-respect. I paused, letting that sink in. But I don't regret this. For the first time in my life, I'm proud of how I handled a family crisis. For the first time in my life, I stood up for my own value. For the first time in my life, I refused to enable dysfunction just to keep the peace. I stepped back and began to close the door. Drive safely, and Jessica, when you're ready to have an adult conversation about adult responsibilities, I'm here. But I'm not here to be your safety net while you avoid growing up. I closed the door and leaned against it, listening to their car pull away. For the first time in 28 years, I felt truly free. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Without the constant drain of family drama, without the ongoing anxiety about when the next demand or criticism would come, I felt like I could breathe fully for the first time in my adult life. My work performance, already strong, became exceptional. I was able to focus completely on my projects without the mental bandwidth being consumed by family stress. I got promoted again, this time to director level, with a salary increase that put me firmly in the six-figure range I'd been working toward for years. My relationships with friends and colleagues deepened as I became more confident and authentic. People who had known me before commented on how much more relaxed and genuine I seemed. I started dating seriously for the first time, finding that I was no longer attracted to people who needed to be fixed or who expected me to carry the emotional and financial weight of the relationship. But the most profound change was internal. For 28 years, I had carried a constant underlying anxiety about my worth. Was I good enough? Was I doing enough? Was I deserving of love and respect? The confrontation with my family had answered those questions definitively. I was good enough, more than good enough. I was doing enough, more than my share. I was absolutely deserving of love and respect. 3 months after the confrontation, Jessica called. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Okay. I think you might have been right about some things." I waited. "My lease is up in 2 weeks, and I've been looking at apartments I can actually afford on my own. They're not very nice." And I've been thinking about why that bothers me so much. Why I feel like I deserve better when I haven't really worked for better. This was not the conversation I'd expected. "I started seeing a therapist," she continued. "Mom and Dad are furious about it, but I needed to understand why I felt so entitled to things I hadn't earned, and why the idea of being truly independent terrified me so much." "What did you learn?" "I learned that they did to me what they did to you, just in the opposite direction. They taught you that you weren't worth investing in, that you had to earn love through perfect behavior and self-sacrifice. But they taught me that I was too fragile and incompetent to take care of myself, that I needed to be protected and provided for indefinitely." I felt a flutter of something I hadn't expected. Hope. "Both messages were damaging," she went on. "Both messages were about control. They kept you trapped by making you feel worthless. They kept me trapped by making me feel helpless." "That's a very mature insight, Jessica." "I found a studio apartment in my budget. It's small and the neighborhood isn't great, but it's mine. I'm going to sign the lease tomorrow." "How does that feel?" "Terrifying and exciting and right." We talked for an hour. She asked questions about budgeting, about building credit, about the practical skills of independent living that she'd never needed to develop. I answered them all, and for the first time in our relationship, I felt like I was talking to an adult instead of a child. "Samantha," she said as we were ending the call. "Yeah, I'm sorry about the birthday thing, about the necklace, about all of it. I knew it was wrong even then, but I was so used to getting everything I wanted that I didn't think about how it affected you. Thank you for saying that. And I understand now why you couldn't just let me move in. It wouldn't have helped either of us. I'm proud of you, Jessica. This is the hardest thing you've ever done, and you're choosing to do it anyway." "I learned from the best," she said quietly. 6 months later, Jessica was thriving in her independence. She'd gotten a promotion at work and was dating someone who respected her growing maturity. We had dinner together once a month, and our relationship was better than it had ever been, built on mutual respect instead of dysfunction. Mom and Dad, on the other hand, were struggling. Without Jessica to enable and me to scapegoat, their marriage was showing cracks that had been hidden for decades. They'd tried to recruit other family members to pressure me back into the old patterns, but most people saw through their manipulation once they heard the full story. More importantly, other family members started sharing their own stories of being pushed around or taken advantage of. It turned out that the family dysfunction went deeper than just my nuclear family. There were patterns of manipulation and control that went back generations. But I had broken the cycle. By refusing to enable Jessica's dependence, I had forced her to develop independence. By refusing to accept their emotional manipulation, I had modeled healthy boundaries for other family members. By choosing my own well-being over their comfort, I had demonstrated that change was possible. A year after the confrontation, I got a letter from Dad. It was long and rambling, full of justifications and explanations, but buried in the middle was something that might have been an apology. He acknowledged that they had perhaps treated Jessica and me differently, and that maybe some of their expectations had been unfair. It wasn't the full accountability I would have preferred, but it was progress. More importantly, it no longer mattered to me whether they could fully admit their mistakes. I had built a life so fulfilling, so successful, and so authentically mine that their approval had become irrelevant. I had friends who celebrated my achievements, colleagues who respected my contributions, and a romantic partner who saw my worth clearly. I had become exactly what I'd promised myself I would become that night 3 years earlier, someone they couldn't hurt anymore. The house that Jessica had once claimed she deserved more than me had become the symbol of everything I'd built through my own efforts. Every mortgage payment was a reminder of my financial responsibility. Every home improvement project was evidence of my investment in my own future. Every dinner party with friends was proof that I had created the loving, supportive community that my biological family had never provided. Standing in my kitchen one evening, cooking dinner for friends who genuinely cared about me, I realized that my parents had been wrong about everything. They'd said I didn't deserve anything, but I had built a life that proved I deserved everything good that had come to me. They'd said family was all I really had, but I had created a chosen family that was more loyal, more supportive, and more loving than the people who shared my DNA. They'd said I would regret setting boundaries, but those boundaries had set me free. The birthday that had broken my heart had ultimately saved my life. Their cruelty had awakened my strength. Their rejection had launched my independence. And every single day, in every single way, I was grateful for the woman I had become, not despite their treatment, but because I had refused to let it define me. I had chosen to define myself.